Members, please be seated. Please be seated so that I know who's here, who's not. All right, we have a quorum. It's time to get started again. If there's no further question, I put this item to the vote. Those in favor, please raise the hands. Those against, please raise the hands. I'm of the view that those members present, majority of them support the item. Item passed. FCR 2013-14-22. Head 708, Capital Subventions and Major Systems and Equipment. Members are invited to approve a new commitment of 81.3 million for the replacement provisioning of toll collection systems at Lantau Toll Plaza and Ma Wan Toll Plaza in Chiang Mai Control Area. On the 24th of May, the Transport Panel of LegCo was consulted on this matter. And the following officials are here with us today. Mr. Patrick Chen, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, and Ms. Cordelia Lam, Principal Assistant Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Albert Su, Assistant Commissioner for Transport, and Mr. Michael Ng, Principal Transport Officer, Management from TD Transport Department, Mr. Chang Xing-chun, Chief Engineer Project from EMSD. Mr. Cham Kam Lam, Chairman of TP, please report the discussion. All right, he's stepped outside. Any questions from members? If not, I'll put this item to the vote. Those in favor, please raise their hands. That is in favor of FCR 2013-14-22. Those against, please raise their hands. I'm of the view that majority of members present and voted support the item. Item passed. Item 6, FCR 2013-14-23. Head 95. LCSD. Members are invited to approve a new commitment of $50 million under a new subhead to be created under Head 95. LCSD for acquiring and commissioning artworks by local artists. On the 28th of May, the HAB consulted the Home Affairs panel on this item. And with us today, Under Secretary Mrs. Avia Lai and Ms. Wong. They are from the Home Affairs Bureau, DS and PAS, and Dr. Louis Ng, Assistant Director of LCS, and Ms. Eve Tam, Chief Curator of LCSD. Mr. and Marvin Kwok, please report the discussion of this item at the Home Affairs panel. Thank you, Chairman. On the 28th of May, the HA panel discussed this item. Most of the members are in support of the funding application for the purpose of acquiring and commissioning artworks by local artists. However, members are concerned about the assessment criteria and the process of acquiring the artworks. They ask for objectivity to be applied. Some members suggested that through the process of acquiring and commissioning artworks, more public participation should be encouraged. Members are also concerned about possible overlapping of exhibits at M+ and the museum. Concerned, and members are worried that there may be a competition for local artworks. On the other hand, some members do not agree to the application. And some members understand that the LCSD is conducting some surveys and some studies on the Hong Kong art history. And members think that before such studies is completed, the application for funding should not be granted. Dr. Helena Wong, I have to say I was the member opposing the funding application. I already made my point at the panel meeting, and I disagree that this funding application should be submitted to the FC at this early stage. It's not that I oppose to granting funding to acquire artworks by local artists. I think the administration should support local artists and artworks created by these artists. However, I would like to seek clarification on certain issues before funding is granted. I understand that the LCSD is conducting some studies on Hong Kong art history. However, the study has not started. How come they are applying for funding now? Before the study is completed, how come it's not the case that they should complete the study first and tell us about Hong Kong art history and tell us what kind of artworks we should acquire? Because with the findings of the studies, we may think we need more funding. We may need more than $50 million. And I want to know how long will the $50 million last? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years? Second question, before 1960s. Now, artworks completed before 1960s, will they be considered for acquiring? These artworks are created by local artists. For the $50 million for acquiring and commissioning artworks by local artists, this is for the LCSD, and will there be competition between M+ and LCSD in acquiring for artworks? I'm concerned because if there is such a competition, the prices will rise. Will M+ focus on acquiring international works instead of acquiring local artworks by local artists? Administration, please. Dr. Wong asked how come we apply for funding before the study is completed. The Art Museum was set up in 1962, and people working in the museum have accumulated certain knowledge on Hong Kong artists. So it's not the case that we have no knowledge about Hong Kong art history. In fact, our colleagues have already accumulated knowledge on local artists and local art history. So there is a sound basis for this funding application. I think Ms. Wong is not asking about knowledge. She's asking why you haven't waited till the completion of these studies before applying for funding. From the paper, members understand that the study plays a supplementary role to assist the LCSD in acquiring artworks. And we can acquire artworks by masters and the artwork at arts festivals and artworks that competed in international competitions. With the funding, we hope we can start our work to acquire the above artworks. And we can conduct the study at the same time. For the second question, how long will the funding last? members may understand that every piece of artwork is unique. So you cannot place a fixed price tag on them. The LCSD has experience in acquiring artworks, and we expect the funding can last for 5 years. There is no time limit to the funding. And when we use the funding, while we're doing that, we'll review our future need. What about artworks before 1960s? Will you consider or not? I defer to Dr. Ng. We will acquire such artworks. The studies is just one of the four areas we're looking at present. We're asking about artworks completed before 60s. Don't repeat yourself. So you will consider such artworks? Yes. Next, Dr. Christopher Chung. Local artists are very happy when they hear about this new commitment. Now, West Kowloon Art District is going to spend $170 million on purchasing artwork. So is the present funding application there just to fob off local artists? The LCSD is just spending a small sum every year on acquiring art pieces. We may have a wide range of art pieces, but it started in the days when City Hall was first established. So I think you're wasting money. West Kowloon is spending $170 million to purchase the art pieces. They are wasting money because they haven't asked professionals about what kind of artworks should be acquired, and the authority of West Kowloon only spent 2 hours on meetings. So I think in terms of operation, they are operating in a wholly different mode than you. Of course, we have to support local artists, but don't think you can rely on this sum for the next 5 years. What can you achieve with $50 million in 5 years? West Kowloon spent $170 million, and yet we know not what they are prepared to acquire. I hope the administration will have some better policy. And to see how we can enrich our museum with art pieces and exhibits. Mrs. Lai, I thank Dr. Chung for his support. When we acquire artworks, we consult experts on our committees so that we will do a good job in spending the $50 million. Dr. Chung, I know your answer has not been answered. Please be quick. I still have time. I'll pursue. I'm asking if you will set down a policy on how the $50 million is to be used in the next 5 years. If it's not going to be enough, how much more do you need? You may see a good piece of good artwork, but you may not have enough money. So what will you do? How much more will you need? If $50 million for the next 5 years is not enough, if you don't have enough money, you can always come back for funding application. We can always grant $100 million to you. Mrs. Lai, we have a four-pronged approach in acquiring art pieces. Artworks by new artists, masters, and artists who have competed in international competitions. Artworks that won awards over the years will be considered. We'll also display artworks by major artists and they will be the targets of our acquiring work. These 4 approaches will form the basis of our future work, and we'll see if the 50 million is enough. If you want to fulfill the 4 areas, is 50 million going to be enough? We can only know how much we need exactly when we are conducting the acquiring. So you need to have a list so that you know how much more you still need.
Mrs. Lai will report to members in due course of our progress. Now, colleagues have actually asked a question, and that is, why don't you look at what you want to buy before you seek funding from us? But you avoided the question. No follow-up from Mr. Zhong, right? Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm an engineer by profession, but I also have keen interest in arts. I can call myself an amateur collector. Now, after the reform and opening up of the mainland China, the artworks made by Chinese artists have enjoyed high status. I'm not only talking about famous artists in the past. I'm talking about contemporary artists as well. Now, the work of the Hong Kong government, as far as promotion is concerned, is not sufficient. So about this proposal of allocating $50 million for LCSD to acquire and collect artworks from local artists, I give my strong support for artworks in the international arena. We're only providing little funding to acquire artworks by local artists. So I support it. According to para 14 of the paper, well, in the past, the total expenditure on acquisition of local artists was just too little. From 2008-09 to 2012-13, the total expenditure ranged from $1.69 million to $6.1 million. So I also have a similar question. Let me put it this way. Are you going to increase expenditure on acquisition of local artworks, or will it just be tens of millions of dollars? Because if it's a really good piece of artwork, $50 million won't get you anywhere. You won't be able to acquire more than a few pieces of good artwork. So will you step up the promotion of local artworks and expedite progress? Mrs. Lai, if we have more funding, of course we can step up our promotion and support for local artworks. Now, it's true that our funding for acquisition of local artworks was not very sufficient, and $50 million, according to our estimation, would be able to last for 5 years. Well, that will, of course, depend on the actual circumstances, but roughly speaking, every year we will have $10 million for the expenditure on the acquisition. Dr. Lo, if you really minded to promote local artworks, well, the $50 million should not last you 5 years, but a shorter period. I understand that your goal is not to acquire international paintings, for example, which will cost tens of millions of dollars. But for local artworks, even some local artworks are quite pricey in the international art collection market. Next, Mr. Albert Ho. Now, local artist, what definition do you have in mind when we talk about local artists? Well, for example, the calligraphy works are by Mr. Zhang Zhouchai, then of course we know it's a local artist. What about other artists like Xu Beihong and Wang Yongyu? Will they be regarded as local artists just because their artworks were produced in Hong Kong? For local artists, what we have in mind are artists that spend lengthy period of time in engaging in artwork in Hong Kong. Now, for details, perhaps I'll defer to Dr. Ng. Well, for example, those born in Hong Kong, those residing in Hong Kong, those who are Hong Kong ID card holders. That is to say, they spent a great deal of time in Hong Kong. For Bunzhong, for example, he is a Chinese painting master, but he didn't stay in Hong Kong for a long time, so we will not regard him as local artist. Neither would we regard Mr. Cui Beihong as local artist. Well, you can't acquire a single painting of Cui Beihong with just $50 million. So coming back to paragraph 5C, winning entries and selected works of the Hong Kong Contemporary Art Award. We hope that some of these works can be acquired so that we have a collection of artworks by local artists. Now, my other question is about collectors. Now, just like Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, he is also a collector. He might have rather small collection. I don't know how small it is, maybe 1,000 paintings. And there are collectors who will consider donating part of their collection. And this is the best way. In fact, I understand that be it antiques or other artworks, there are collectors who are willing to donate their collection. That might be more efficient than allocating $50 million for acquisition. Mrs. Lai. Now, the Hong Kong Art Museum has built up a collection of 16,000 plus artworks, and that is because we have acquired artworks by local artists, and we will continue to do that. This will be a dual-track approach. On the one hand, we will accept donations. On the other hand, we will also acquire suitable artworks. So how much effort will you put in to attract or encourage collectors to donate their collections? They may be willing to lend you their collected pieces for exhibitions on a regular basis. I'll defer to Dr. Ng. In fact, we are in close contact with collectors in Hong Kong, and there are two ways. One way is to collaborate with them. We borrow their collection and hold exhibitions on a regular basis, and some of the borrowed pieces, in fact, will be donated after the exhibition. And for valuable artworks, well, sometimes we will have a dedicated exhibition space for those works, and we're still continuing with this effort. Anything to follow up? No? Mr. Chung Kwok Ban. Procurement and collection procedures, or acquisition and collection strategies. Here you say that masters' artworks will also be acquired. They might include photography, prints, paintings, calligraphies, sculptures, installations, and mixed media. For contemporary artworks, they cover different media, works in different media such as video, animation, etc. So it covers a wide area. Does the LCSD have a list of masters in each of these categories? Do you have a name list, Dr. Ng? Our colleagues have a list of masters and their achievements, and we have collected their artworks in our museum as well. We're talking about acquiring more of their artworks. we do note their new artworks and whether they can be acquired in market. So my question is under what circumstances we will consider acquiring the work, for example, photography, and where will they be stored or displayed? Now, our colleagues working in the museums are professionals. They, first of all, can identify masters, and also we have advisors, and we, on a regular basis, seek advice from these advisors on acquisition matters. Mr. Zhong, and you say that for newcomers, you will also acquire their artworks in a systematic manner. Can you define what that means? Now, they may be fresh graduates, and their works might have been displayed at exhibitions, and they might enjoy some degree of recognition, or some of their artworks might have been auctioned, and our colleagues would look at these new artists. Second round, Dr. Helena Wong, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, the administration replied by saying that you are looking into the art history of Hong Kong. So can you supply a supplementary paper telling us the focus of your study and the outcome? And another question which hasn't been answered is the artworks to be acquired by LCSD, and whether there will be any overlapping with the collection of M+. And Para 9 actually explained this point. According to Para 9, the $50 million will be used to acquire artworks by local artists, whereas for M+, in the future, you're minded to hold exhibitions of visual arts, design, architecture, and moving image from Hong Kong and the mainland. So you haven't answered my question just now. Does it mean that the LCSD will focus in future on acquiring local artists, whereas for M+, the focus will not be on local artworks? Because all along our understanding of M+ and the WKCD is that in the future the focus of M+ should be a museum for collecting works of visual arts by Hong Kong artists. So are you telling us that M+ will not be positioned as a museum of local artworks? Now, we got the understanding that M+ is about local visual arts. So is it a departure from the original objective, Mrs. Lai? Now, first of all, we can supply the information requested by Dr. Wong and about the positioning of LCSD and M+. In relation to the acquisition and collection strategies and their focus. Well, there hasn't been any change. For LCSD, the established practice for the acquisition of artworks is that the LCSD acquires local artworks. For M+, yes, local artworks will also be acquired, but this will not be the only collection, because M+ would like to reflect the international art scene. So we will consider, as far as the strategies are concerned, how the local artworks can correlate with the international artworks, so they have different they have a different focus. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Now, whether local artworks can have their artwork pieces present at the international auction events, yes, there are local artists I can quotes names now. Of course, if you're talking about commissioning local artists to produce artworks, then of course we're talking about those who are still alive. Well, we talked about masters with the artworks auctioned in international events. $50 million can't allow you to acquire too many pieces. Well, there are artworks donated by collectors to the museums. So the $50 million should be used for promoting local artworks and for helping emerging local artists. You need to explain this point clearly because some members have been confused. Mrs. Lai. Well, the member's point is very correct because our initiative is to support local artworks, and our focus is on how local artists or artistic talent can be nurtured. So our focus is on acquiring artworks by local artists. Mr. Christopher Jung. Now about public art or public art projects. $50 million is a small sum. If you want to have good artworks displayed in public places, you need to consider the cost for installation, etc. And the money is not enough. So you should tell us. As we support the work of LCSD, can you tell us in greater detail in the future what artworks will be commissioned, who will be commissioned, and what will be the funding involved for public art? Of course, there might be Chinese paintings, etc. But I think 50 million is not enough. So can this be separated? I mean, can another project be set up and for you to come back and seek more funding? This will enhance our quality or standard of humanity. Because I think that you used to be very frugal and you're always afraid of overspending even if we just approve tens of millions of funding. Are you asking the administration to withdraw the paper and reconsider the proposal? I really don't understand what you're getting at as you go along, so I need to ask you specifically whether you're asking the administration to withdraw the proposal. No, I'm asking them to spend the money first and come back for more funding if necessary. Thank you, Mr. Zhong, for your comment. We will try to spend the money as quickly as possible and come back for more. Anything to follow up? Third round, Dr. Helena Wong. 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I support local artworks as well. I hope that apart from acquiring artworks, the LCSD can also conduct detailed research on the local art history. This should be the basis. At the same time, I'm also concerned about M+. The objective of M+ is to promote visual art culture. Dr. Helena Wong, you've asked the question twice, but this is not what the paper is about. This is, well, Chairman, I am asking in relation to paragraph 9 of the paper, in relation to M+ and LCSD, in relation to the collection policy and their cooperation in the future. So my question is relevant. So, Mrs. Lai, is it the case that M+ will place its focus away from local artworks? M+'s focus will start with local artists and will extend the coverage to China. So local artworks will also be acquired. But what will be the percentage? There is no fixed percentage or proportion, but definitely local artworks will be included. So is M+ evolving to something that includes visual art culture as one of the elements, whereas you also have visual art culture in China and across the world. The ultimate goal of M+ is to reflect the development of visual culture across the world. So we'll expand the coverage from Hong Kong to mainland to other regions.
If there's no other question, I'll put the proposal to the vote. Will those in favor of the proposal in paper FCR 2013-14-23 please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the majority of the voting members support the proposals. The proposals are endorsed. Item 7 on the agenda, FCR 2013-14-24, Loan Fund, Head 252, Loans to Schools and Teachers. Members are invited to approve a startup loan of $800 million to Hang Seng School of Commerce for the operation of Hang Seng Management College. Under the startup loan scheme for post-secondary education providers from the loan scheme. On the 30th of May, the administration consulted the panel on education. In attendance to answer members' questions, we have the following officials. Mr. Kevin Young, Under Secretary for Education, Ms. Pat Vin Yung, Principal Assistant Secretary for Education, Professor Gilbert Fong, President of Hang Seng Management College of Hang Seng School of Commerce, Professor Lau Ho Fok, Associate Vice President of Hang Seng Management College, Ms. Suzanne Chan, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee of the Hang Seng Management College, and Professor Raymond So, the Dean of the School of Business, Hang Seng Management College. Mr. Lam Tai Fai, Chairman of the panel, please report. On the 30th of May, at the meeting of the panel on education, we discussed the funding allocation. Members were in general supportive of this startup loan of $800 million. Hang Seng School of Commerce to develop their campus and students' hostels, as well as locally accredited full-time programs. Some members were very concerned about high tuition fees charged by the Hang Seng School of Commerce in order to pay up the loan. The school said that they would make use of their reserve to pay for part of the loan, and tuition fees will only be used for recurrent expenses for operations. To support the development of tertiary education, members are of the view that subvention should be offered by the government instead of a loan. At the request of members, the administration gave us written information on the payment of loans under various heads, and members expressed their views on the regulation of self-financed private institutions. At the end, members support the funding proposals. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the proposal in the paper. In paragraph 11 of the paper, it is said that interest-free loans will be offered to the school for 10 years. And beyond the first 10 years, interest will be charged. I don't think a punitive measure is appropriate. because if the school cannot repay the loan in 10 years' time, there must be problems. So we can still offer an interest-free loan beyond the first 10 years, but we should try to understand where the problems lie and try to offer support. Otherwise, the school may have to find ways and means to repay the loan, and education quality may be affected. Interest-free for the first 10 years? Yes, Mr. Chairman. And the repayment can be made in 10 years' time by installment. We understand the details of their plan, and then we'll be able to know how the loan can be repaid in 10 years' time. So in our view, there shouldn't be any problem for them to repay the loan in 10 years' time. If because of any reason they cannot repay the loan in 10 years' time, as we're using public money, we have to adopt a no-gain, no-loss rate. At the moment is 1%, which is much lower than in the outside market. So we would like to strike a balance between the development of tertiary institutions and the repayment of the loan. Mr. Yu Si-wing, to charge 1% of interest after 10 years is not really that meaningful. I think you should try to make arrangements to allow them to develop well. So I suggest that you don't charge any interest. Rather, you should try to look into their problems and offer assistance, rather than imposing a punitive interest rate. Mr. Chairman, we don't intend to impose a punitive interest rate. We would like to adopt a 10-year subvention program. Previously, we did observe that under certain circumstances, the 10-year period may have to be extended. But beyond the 10 years, if we don't charge any interest, then even for other tertiary institutions, the repayment period may be extended to, say, up to 20 years. In fact, in most cases, the loans could be repaid in 10 years' time. As for Mr. Yu Si-wing's suggestion, where and when appropriate, we can consider it. Mr. Yu, any follow-up? Dr. Helena Wong? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question 1. In paragraph 3, they explain why a loan is needed. The Democratic Party, of course, supports any assistance for tertiary institutions such that our students can have more choices to further their studies. As for promotion of developments of tertiary institutions, the UGC once suggested that there should be a standardized regulatory framework such that we can have a standardized regulatory regime for the quality of education provided by such institutions. Can the administration inform us what the latest progress is in that regard? Well, that has nothing to do with this paper. You're asking about the UGC's proposal to standardize the regulatory regime. We're not discussing UGC. We're not talking about standardized regulation. Undersecretary, it's up to you to answer or not. Mr. Chairman, in August last year, we launched the 6th round of match-up funds for the tertiary institutions, which are subject to standardized accreditation. And we convened 2 to 3 meetings with the 8 UGC-funded tertiary institutions. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I still have another question that is concerning the enrollment of students by tertiary institutions. As our population, or rather as population growth will cease in future, therefore, the number of students in the suitable age group for tertiary education may shrink. So would you please tell us your forecast for the next 10 years in terms of demographic structure and the student population for tertiary education? Will the tertiary student population diminish, resulting in fierce competition among tertiary institutions as well as attraction of non-local tertiary students? Dr. Helena Wong, today we're not discussing future student population for tertiary institutions. Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the next 10 years. Well, Dr. Wong, we're talking about the Hang Seng School of Commerce. Just now your question was about the overall demand for tertiary education in the next 10 years. I was asking for demand, but how is that related to this paper? If there's no demand, then why should there be a loan for development? Mr. Chairman, would you please ask the Bureau to answer the question? Under Secretary. Mr. Chairman, concerning the population drop, I think we've all observed that phenomenon, and in future, the tertiary student population will also drop. The Hang Seng School of Commerce also noted that, so they'll try to collate their effort in terms of quality. I'll hand this issue back to the tertiary sector to see how they'll handle that problem. If Dr. Helena Wong wants to know that aspect in relation to Hang Seng School of Commerce, I think the school can answer it. Well, if the population is dropping, why are you so bold in taking up a loan of $800 million? Mr. Chairman, for the secondary graduates in Hong Kong, about 18 to 20% can enter university. Therefore, in future, briefly, if the number of secondary students drops, we still have this demand for tertiary places. Because in the next few years, for UGC-funded tertiary institutions, they will not have any additional places. Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Chairman, we basically support this funding proposal for Hang Seng School of Commerce. The Financial Secretary said that he would like to establish Hong Kong as an international asset management center and will have to nurture talents toward that goal. Has the administration asked the HSSC to place more resources in training talents in that regard to cope with government's policies? Mr. Chairman, for the operation of tertiary institutions, we leave it to the tertiary institutions themselves to work out the operational details. Perhaps the HSSC can answer that question. Mr. Chairman, we have actually designed our curriculum. We have 5 degree places. Business administration, covering accounting, banking, financial training, and business management. And then in 2014, we're prepared to start 5 other degree programs: enterprise management, business administration, financial analysis, general business management, and management studies for business management, as well as IT management, data science, and so forth. Therefore, we'll try as far as possible to cope with market demands and the demands of Hong Kong. We're also prepared to open MBA programs and EMBA programs, as well as short courses for management personnel. We hope that in training Hong Kong's management personnel, we can make some contribution. Any supplement? Mr. Lam Tai Fai? I'd like to follow up on the question asked by Mr. Yu Si Wing, who has just left the room. I'm of the view that beyond the first 10 years, if the HSSC has to pay an interest, it is not in conflict with monitoring HSSC. Those are two different issues. I agree with the Undersecretary that if beyond 10 years the HSSC still does not have to pay interest, is unfair to other tertiary institutions. In the past, the Finance Committee at least approved 20 to 30 such funding proposals. So I don't agree with Mr. Yu Si Wing. Yet, monitoring and regulation are very important. Self-financed tertiary institutions have experienced a number of problems in terms of enrollment. Lingnan University has over-enrolled students. So we must do our regulation work well. Otherwise, the interest-free loan for 10 years cannot serve its purpose and will fall short of social aspiration for training of talents and professionals. Let me ask a follow-up question with HSSC. We approved 20 to 30 similar funding proposals. Were there any cases of the institutions failing to repay the loan within the period that would not be good? Did they have the ability to repay the loans? Undersecretary. Mr. Chairman, up to this moment, all of them have repaid their loans on time. But there are a few cases of extension. That means they failed to repay within the specified period. Don't play sophistry with me. How many did not repay within the specified time frame? Can you speak into the microphone, please? Oh, yes. 8. You mean 8 loan applications? Yes, 8 loan applications. So that's quite a high ratio. You only approved 28. 8 over 28 is a high ratio. In the past 10 years, you did not monitor their financial situation. That's why they had asked for extension. So not just self-financed institutions should come under monitoring, but also you. Mr. Chairman, when we examined their applications and their extension applications, we've all along been monitoring their progress. In the process, some elements or some phenomena may have emerged. Please be short. These institutions are self-financing. They're trying their very best to charge tuition fees. Many of their graduates had to bear huge debts upon graduation. They're self-financing. If they cannot support themselves, they should be punished. Why there are 8 extension applications? They enrolled enough number of students. Undersecretary, Mr. Chairman, according to information in hand, it's very often because of external factors that they could not repay their loans. They organized very popular courses, or because of competition within a certain time frame, they might experience problems. As they're self-financed institutions, they can make adjustments in accordance with market conditions. Sometimes, because they had problems, they improved. But financially, during a certain period of time, they might have difficulties. They asked for extension for repayment. Every time, they were able to repay the loan as required. So from our standpoint, they were actually repaying on schedule. Mr. Lam Tai Fai, well, I absolutely agree to this funding proposal, but I absolutely am not satisfied with the Under-Secretary's reply. I think other colleagues are not satisfied. After the meeting, they should give us a written reply. Tell us the details of those 8 loans that could not be paid up in time, and tell us which institutions they were. May I suggest that you follow this up at the panel level? Well, there are 23 members in the panel, but I would like all the 70 members to be heard. Well, the whole world can hear them. All members of the public can hear them. Is there any other question from members? If not, I'll put this proposal to the vote. With those in favor of the proposals in paper FCR 2013-14-24, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the majority of the voting members are in support of the proposals. The proposals are endorsed. We've completed all the agenda items today. Our next meeting will be held on the 5th of July 2013. Thank you.